Hello and welcome to my channel. I hope you enjoy this story. I'm going to try and upload a new story each day. The Haunted Playground. Holly Arnold had returned to the Isle of Wight after many years, seeking some peace after the chaos of her recent life. The picturesque island, with its rolling hills and sandy beaches, had always been her sanctuary. But as she drove through the familiar streets of her hometown, something felt different. The vibrant, carefree air she remembered seemed weighed down by something dark, something invisible yet palpable, hanging like a shadow over the otherwise idyllic setting. Her destination was a small cottage left to her by her late grandmother, situated at the edge of town. Just across from it was the newly renovated Havenbrook Park, a playground that the town had boasted about for months. When she was a child, the area had been an overgrown field, cordoned off by a rusty gate. Kids whispered about it being cursed, but Holly had never paid much attention to the old stories. Now it was transformed into a bright, colorful playground with swings, slides, and a roundabout. Children's laughter echoed through the air when she arrived, but it quickly faded as the sun dipped below the horizon. After unpacking her bags, Holly stepped outside to get some fresh air. The street was quiet, save for the distant sound of the sea. But as she glanced at the playground across the road, she felt a sudden chill. In the dim glow of the streetlights, she saw it. The roundabout was slowly turning on its own, creaking with every revolution. There was no wind, no children, no sign of anyone nearby. She froze, staring at it as her mind raced to rationalize the scene. It was probably just a trick of the eye, or maybe the wind had picked up without her noticing. Shaking her head, Holly dismissed it as fatigue and went back inside. But sleep came uneasily that night, plagued by dreams of shadowy figures circling her, whispering in a language she couldn't understand. The next morning, Holly met with a few of the townsfolk at the local market. While chatting with a friendly old shopkeeper named Mrs. Farley, she mentioned the strange incident at the playground. "Oh, dear," Mrs. Farley said. "You don't know, do you?" Holly asked, feeling a creeping sense of unease. The land where the playground sits, it used to be an old burial ground. A long time ago, back in the 1800s, there was a cholera outbreak. Dozens of people were buried there, and it was forgotten for years until the town decided to redevelop the area. Not everyone was happy about it, but the council went ahead with it anyway. Now, strange things happen, especially at night. "What kind of strange things?" she asked. "People see figures, hear voices, feel like they're being watched, and always at that playground." That night, Holly lay in bed. The creaking sound of the roundabout echoed in her ears, though she couldn't be sure if it was real or just in her mind. Unable to shake the eerie feeling, she got up, pulled on her jacket, and decided to confront whatever was out there. The playground loomed in the dark as she approached. The swings hung motionless, the slide gleaming under the moonlight. But the roundabout once again was slowly spinning, its rusted metal scraping softly against the ground. Holly stopped just at the edge of the fence, heart pounding. She didn't want to go any closer, but something compelled her to move forward. She stepped onto the playground, the gravel crunching beneath her feet. "Hello," she called out. The roundabout abruptly stopped. She froze. For a long moment there was only silence. And then, from the far corner of the playground, she heard it, a soft, childlike giggle. Holly whipped around, but there was no one there. The giggling grew louder, more insistent. It seemed to come from everywhere at once, surrounding her. Shadows shifted at the edge of her vision, figures darting between the trees, too quick to catch. Her breath came in shallow gasps as a cold wind swept through the park. Suddenly, the roundabout began to spin again, this time faster and faster, as if something invisible was pushing it. And then, in a blur of movement, a small figure appeared on one of the horses attached to the structure, a child, no older than 7, dressed in old-fashioned clothes, her eyes black as coal. She stared at Holly, her mouth twisted into a ghastly smile. Holly stumbled back, her heart racing, but her legs refused to move fast enough. The child's laughter pierced the night, shrill and otherworldly, as more figures began to materialize around her. Children, their faces pale and expressionless, their eyes empty sockets. They circled the roundabout, their laughter growing louder, more maddening, as they reached out towards her with tiny, bony hands. Panicked, Holly turned and ran, her feet slipping on the gravel as she sprinted back to her cottage. She slammed the door behind her, locking it and pressing her back against the wood as her chest heaved. The giggles followed her, lingering in the air outside, and then silence. She collapsed onto the floor, tears streaming down her face. She didn't know what she had seen, but it wasn't her imagination. Something was wrong with that playground. Something was terribly, terribly wrong. The following days were filled with a suffocating sense of dread. Holly could no longer ignore the strange occurrences. The once vibrant playground had become a place of terror. Local parents whispered about how their children spoke of invisible friends who played on the swings with them. Others reported waking up in the middle of the night to see ghostly figures standing at the foot of their beds. Desperate for answers, Holly sought out the town historian, Mr. Pritchard, a reclusive man who lived near the old cemetery. He listened intently as she recounted her experiences, nodding slowly. "That the spirits of the dead are restless. The burial ground was desecrated when they built that playground. Those souls, they were never given peace. They were left in the dark, forgotten, and now they're angry." Holly asked, her voice quivering. "How do I stop it?" Pritchard handed her an old. "There's a ritual. A way to put the spirits to rest, but it must be done at the place where the disturbances are strongest, and you must do it before midnight, though their hold on this place will become permanent that night." With trembling hands, armed with nothing but the ancient book and a flickering lantern, she returned to the playground just before midnight. The air was thick with an unnatural chill, and the roundabout was spinning once more, this time so fast it blurred in the darkness. She stepped into the center of the playground, her heart pounding in her ears. The shadows of the children appeared again, circling her, their laughter now warped and sinister. Holly took a deep breath and began the incantation, her voice shaking with fear. As she chanted, the wind howled through the trees, and the ghostly children drew closer. Their hollow eyes bored into her, their voices merging into a cacophony of anguish and rage. The roundabout spun faster and faster, the ground beneath it seeming to quake. Holly's vision blurred, but she kept chanting, refusing to give in to the terror clawing at her mind. Just as the clock struck midnight, the wind stopped. The laughter ceased. The shadows froze in place. Then, one by one, the ghostly figures began to fade, their anguished faces softening as they disappeared into the night. The roundabout came to a halt, and the playground fell silent. Holly stood there, panting, her body trembling with exhaustion and relief. The spirits were gone. The playground was still. But as she turned to leave, she heard a soft giggle, faint but unmistakable, echoing through the darkness. Holly's heart skipped a beat as the faint giggle echoed through the playground, faint yet undeniable. She stopped in her tracks, refusing to turn around, every instinct telling her to leave. Her pulse pounded in her ears, and the cold October air seemed to grow thicker, suffocating her. "No," she whispered to herself. "It's over. It has to be over." But the giggle came again, louder this time. A chill crawled up her spine as she felt the unmistakable sensation of eyes watching her from behind. Slowly, against her better judgment, she turned back toward the roundabout. It was still, just as she had left it, but standing beside it was a figure, a child. The same child with cold black eyes and that twisted smile, her face pale and frozen in an expression of unnatural glee. Holly's legs felt rooted to the spot. The ritual had worked. It had to have worked. The book, the chance, the nightmarish encounter, it had all ended in success. Or so she thought. The girl didn't move, but her giggle was now clear, echoing through the empty playground like a haunting melody. Holly's breath quickened as she tried to make sense of the situation. Could she have missed something in the ritual? A mistake? Or perhaps, as Mr. Pritchard had warned, some spirits were too powerful to be laid to rest. "Huh?" Holly whispered, her voice trembling. The girl tilted her head slightly, her black eyes gleaming in the dim light. Her smile widened, stretching her pale skin unnaturally across her face. Holly felt a surge of cold dread wash over her. Without warning, the girl stepped onto the roundabout and sat down, gripping one of the metal bars with her tiny hands. She pushed it gently, and the roundabout began to spin slowly. As it picked up speed, Holly noticed something terrifying: the shadows. Dark shapes were beginning to form around the playground again, faint at first, but growing darker and more defined with every turn of the roundabout. They were the children, the spirits she thought she had banished. No, Holly muttered. No, this can't be happening. The shadows solidified, becoming clearer, their faces contorted with anger and sorrow. Dozens of them now, children of all ages, surrounded the roundabout, their empty eyes locked onto Holly. She stumbled back, her hands shaking, but she couldn't look away. The girl on the roundabout giggled again, louder this time, her voice piercing the night. The sound seemed to awaken the others. The air filled with their laughter, rising into a twisted symphony of voices, each more shrill and sinister than the last. It was as though the spirits were mocking her, taunting her for thinking she could stop them. Holly turned and ran. She bolted across the playground, her feet slipping on the gravel as the laughter followed her, growing louder and more distorted with each step. Her breath came in ragged gasps as she reached her cottage and slammed the door shut behind her. The moment the door closed, the laughter ceased, replaced by an oppressive silence. Holly leaned against the door, her chest heaving. Her mind raced, trying to piece together what had gone wrong. The ritual had been followed to the letter. Why were they still here? And why was that girl, the one who appeared first, so different from the others? As her thoughts spiraled, she heard something, a soft scraping sound coming from the window. Holly's head snapped toward it, her blood running cold. The girl was standing outside, her hands pressed against the glass, staring in with that same eerie smile. Behind her, the shadows of the other children flickered in the darkness, watching, waiting. Holly stepped back, her heart pounding in her chest. She needed to get help, someone, anyone who might know what to do. But who could she turn to? Mr. Pritchard. He'd given her the ritual, and it had failed. Maybe there was more to the story, something he hadn't told her. Without another thought, Holly grabbed her coat and keys and hurried out the back door. She had to find answers, and fast. Mr. Pritchard's house stood at the edge of town, near the old cemetery. Holly reached it in record time, her knuckles white from gripping the steering wheel. The shadows seemed to follow her, haunting her every turn, but she couldn't stop now. She banged on the old man's door, her breath clouding in the chilly night air. "Mr. Pritchard, please." Holly's voice cracked with desperation. After a tense moment, the door creaked open, and the frail, elderly man peered out. "Holly," he asked. "But what's going on? They're still here. The children, the spirits. The ritual didn't work." "Impossible. I gave you the correct rituals. It's worked for others. Well..." Holly interrupted, her voice shaking. "They are getting stronger. There's one girl who keeps appearing. She's not like the others. I think she's controlling them." Pritchard's eyes widened. Once they were seated in his cluttered living room, he lit a small oil lamp, casting flickering shadows on the walls. "The girl," he began slowly. "You said she stands out from the rest?" Holly nodded. "She's always smiling, her eyes, they are pitch black. The other spirits seem to follow her." Pritchard sat back. "The I was afraid of this?" Holly asked, her stomach twisting with dread. The old man leaned forward, his voice barely above a whisper. "There's a legend, an old tale from the time of the cholera outbreak. Most of the spirits buried there were victims of the disease, but there was one child, the girl, who wasn't. Her name was Abigail Harrod." "Abigail," Holly repeated. "Yes, she was different," Pritchard continued. "Even before she died, the townsfolk feared her. They said she had a dark power, a way of controlling others. When the cholera hit, it was rumored that she caused it, cursed the town out of spite. No one knows how she died, but she was buried in that field, away from the others, then in a marked grave." "And you think?" Holly asked, her voice barely audible. Pritchard nodded gravely. "She's not just another restless spirit. Abigail Harrow is something far worse, and if she's awoken, there's no telling what she might do. The children weren't just spirits. They were under the control of something far darker, something malevolent." "Ah?" Holly asked, though she feared the answer. Pritchard hesitated, his hands trembling slightly. "There may be one way, but it's dangerous. You would need to find her grave and confront her there. Only by destroying the remains can her spirit be banished for good, but it won't be easy. Abigail won't let you get close without a fight." Holly swallowed hard. She had no choice. If she didn't stop Abigail, the hauntings would only get worse, and the entire town could be at risk. Armed with Pritchard's instructions, Holly found herself back at the playground, shovel in hand, in the dead of the night. The moon hung high in the sky, casting an eerie glow over the equipment. The swings creaked in the breeze, and the roundabout was still, as if waiting for her. She began to dig near the spot Pritchard had indicated, an area just beyond the edge of the playground, where the unmarked graves were said to be. As the shovel bit into the earth, Holly's heart pounded in her chest. The wind howled around her, and from the corner of her eye she saw the figures of the children emerging from the shadows once again. But this time Abigail was not laughing. She stood at the center of the playground, watching Holly with those cold, black eyes. The smile was gone, replaced by an expression of fury. The other spirits circled her, their faces contorted in anger. Holly kept digging, faster now, the sound of the shovel hitting dirt mingling with the whispers of the spirits around her. Abigail's figure moved closer, and with each step the temperature dropped, the air growing heavy with a suffocating pressure. Finally, the shovel hit something hard wood. Holly's heart raced as she knelt down, frantically brushing away the dirt. Beneath her was an old, rotting coffin, barely intact after all these years. As Holly pried the lid open, a rush of cold air hit her. Inside lay the decayed remains of Abigail Harrow, her bones twisted and blackened, her skull resting on a pillow of dirt. The wind screamed around her, and Abigail's spirit let out a deafening shriek, her shadowy form rushing toward Holly. But before the ghost could reach her, Holly raised the iron spike Pritchard had given her and drove it into Abigail's remains. The shriek rose to a crescendo, piercing Holly's ears as the shadows swirled around her, and then silence. Abigail's figure flickered, her black eyes widening in shock and fury, before dissolving into the night. The other spirits faded with her, their forms vanishing into the cold October air. And just like that, the playground was still once more. Holly sat back, her body trembling with exhaustion and relief. She had done it. Abigail Harrow was gone, and the children, those innocent souls, were finally at peace. But as Holly stood to leave, she heard a sound that made her blood run cold. A soft, faint giggle, barely audible, echoing through the night. And then silence. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this story. Please don't forget to like, and even better, like and subscribe. Thank you very much, and I hope you have had or have a great day.